Seguimos adelante con los paneles de esta primera jornada del Minting Summit y vamos a ir a un panel del cual les adelantaba antes de la pausa. Metaverso, un nuevo paradigma. Es un panel internacional que tenemos aquí en piso a Agustina Pérez Comenale y también estarán invitados Gauci y Pablo Coirolo, ambos amigos de la casa. Bueno, Agustina, me tomo unos segundos primero para decirte que te ves espléndida en ese sofá de Concept. ¿Viste lo que es?
No, la verdad que entre
Adivino.
los muebles y la escenografía es increíble lo que han generado, así que felicitaciones a toda la organización, porque la verdad que es impresionante.
Está muy bueno porque además, bueno, Concept con lo que es ya su estilo característico, ¿no? Muebles de nivel y muy confortables, unidos además a la ambientación que tiene mucho que ver con esto del metaverso, ¿no? Así que estamos súper contentos. Agustina Pérez Comenale, como les decía, es escribana, abogada, profesora de la UM, también es integrante de la Comisión de Derecho Comercial y la Comisión de Derecho Informático y Nuevas Tecnologías de la Asociación de Escribanos del Uruguay, forma parte del grupo Legal Hackers Montevideo, es miembro de la Sala de Blockchain e Inteligencia Artificial UCC de Argentina y coorganizadora del Legal Tech Summit 2021, que 4 y 5 de agosto estará nuevamente.
Exactamente, 4 y 5 de agosto de 2022 vamos a estar de vuelta con el Legal Tech Summit y vamos a estar viendo todas esas temáticas que tienen que ver justamente con toda esta tecnología disruptiva, nuevos escenarios digitales. Y bueno, y también vamos a seguir hablando de algunos temas que no dejan de ser tendencia, como es, por ejemplo, la identidad digital, los contratos digitales, el tema de la tributación, toda la parte fiscal, ¿no? Que es uno de los grandes temas que estamos viendo, y ni que hablar de todo lo que tiene que ver justamente con la parte regulatoria en cuanto a lo que es activos virtuales y bueno, y este mundo digital de metaverso y NFTs.
Lo que decíamos al comienzo de esta transmisión, que tiene que ver con un nuevo mundo que se abre y para ustedes los abogados y toda la parte legal también un nuevo desafío, ¿no? Así que eso será 4 y 5 de agosto y ya tendremos tiempo, por supuesto, para conversar en extenso. Pero quiero seguir presentando a los miembros de este panel. Gauci, otro amigo de la casa desde Malta, es socio, director y fundador de GTG Advocates and Affiliation, asesor para el gobierno, la industria y varias autoridades, incluyendo la Autoridad de Servicios Financieros de Malta y la Autoridad de Innovación Digital de ese país, miembro fundador de la Asociación Maltesa de Abogados de TI y Blockchain de ese país y miembro del International Master of Gaming Lawyers. Y por otro lado, también tenemos a Pablo Coirolo. Pablo es uruguayo, pero vive en Europa desde hace ya tiempo. Está invitado como CEO Light de 47 y él se describe como un emprendedor en serie. Recuerdo que estuvo en una muy interesante conferencia también en el Blockchain Summit del año pasado. Nos acompaña desde el comienzo, ¿no? Es pionero en el mundo de las telecomunicaciones y fundó Light 47 en Liechtenstein en el año 2018, una empresa que se dedica a proyectos de blockchain y exchange de criptoactivos, y es miembro del directorio del Crypto Country Association de Liechtenstein, fundador de Crypto Bay Montevideo y posee un MBA de American University Washington, D.C. Así que, Agustina, te dejo a cargo del panel.
Muchas gracias, Alejandra. First of all, thank you, Ian and Pablo, for being here. It's amazing, actually. It's an honor, actually, to have you both in the first fireside chat that we're going to have in the Meeting Summit. So thank you, Ian. Thank you, Pablo. And we're going to start talking about the Metaverse. Actually, we have been already the whole day talking about what the Metaverse is. So I would like really to know, like, both of you, what do you think? If I would ask you, like, what is the Metaverse? What do you think would be the close definition to actually have a concept of it? I don't know if Ian, for instance, if you would like to start.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me. Una alegría estar acá. Así que hago español, inglés. But it's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a real pleasure to be in the first Minting Summit. I think one of the things that for me has been incredible is how much has evolved in Uruguay, starting from when we had in 2015 the first summits, going with Ian, and how it's quickly evolved in Uruguay. Now, with respect to the metaverse, for me, the metaverse is not something new. It's actually something that has evolved from the gaming industry. So what we've always had, these virtual worlds in the gaming industry. What's happened now, I think, that's really different is that the intersection of this virtual world with a financial instrument that's crypto. So for me, the intersection of crypto with the gaming industry is really an explosive event, because the gaming industry today is larger than all of the movie and music industry together. Today, I believe it's something between 150 and 180 billion dollars that are sold in terms of the gaming industry. There's over 2 billion people that participate. That's 26% of the world. And I think that's why it's so important, because we have introduced value into a virtual space, and it's evolving extremely fast. I just came back from Consensus, and in Consensus, it was incredible to see how fast this metaverse is evolving with new players and development of the ecosystem. So that's a little bit of what I think of the metaverse. Ian.
Well, at the outset, I would like to thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. Like Pablo, I've been there literally from the inception. This is the first Minting Summit, but we have a long-standing history with Uruguay. It's one of my favorite places. Now, let me to a certain extent, I agree with Pablo, but I'm going to take it a step further. You ask a very difficult question. What is the metaverse? Right now, there is no commonly agreed definition, the definition of a metaverse. Is it one? Is it multiple? Okay. Is it something in creation? Is it something, as Pablo said, which is already there? So do people use the same term? No, because different outfits do use different terms, even hyper internet. So to a certain extent, we are all waiting for a proper definition of the metaverse. What I can tell you is what we have right now, however. And here, this takes me to what Pablo was discussing. Right now, we're living in a digital world, which, according to Thomas Friedman, has, aside from the gaming side, we have integrated circuits and microchips. We had memory units, now massively powerful to store information. Networks, ubiquitous networks that help enhance communication, okay? Software applications. We are redundant on software artifacts, whether it's smart contracts now, whether it's tokens, whether it's DAO, any form of application, AI, software applications that provide as well a direct interface to consumers, enabling consumer interaction peer-to-peer, sometimes even removing the famous middleman, so pure decentralization. We have as well sensor capacity that allows for like artificial intelligence, IoT in the future as well, where this will all form part of one ethos, one community, one network, or multiple network meshed together. This for me is a revolution. It's practically the fourth industrial revolution and beyond. We're already experiencing the threshold of the fifth industrial revolution here, with meshing up of IoT, big data, robotics, as Pablo said before, gamification, gaming as well, artificial intelligence, blockchain, virtual reality, and augmented reality, which were there before. What is the difference? Everything is meshed, everything is converged together. It's one universe which will empower the individual. It is a meta-universe to the extent here, we have to quote Neil Stephenson's, at least what is beyond. It is something which will project us beyond the existing universe, but it is something which will make us form part of this universe, intrinsically embedded within it. That might be the potential. Speaking simply about myself and Pablo, we're in the telecommunications industry. Simple words, it is a network. Now, how powerful, how ubiquitous, how scalable that network is will depend on us. That is practically the metaverse.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we, like both of you actually, are agreeing that we could be talking about more than metaverse, maybe like virtual spaces. And let's say that maybe all the technology that we are using actually is already existing. So we are some pre-existing technology. So I think that that is something that maybe we can all agree on. And after that, of course, we'll be waiting to see what is going to happen and how this is going to evolve. But one of the main questions also is, I would like to, both of you actually gave us an idea, like you're actually both of you in Europe. So let's say, what is the landscape there? Like regarding, let's not call it metaverse maybe, but we can call it, let's say, like virtual spaces or virtual scenarios. With this conversion of blockchain, artificial intelligence and everything.
Right. What I can tell you, I'm in the States right now. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I just came, again, from Texas, from Consensus. And I think one of the things that Ian was saying, it's like all of these technologies that have existed. I mean, remember that Satoshi Nakamoto did not invent anything new. What he was able to do is take different technologies that already existed and were invented and form them in a way that created the blockchain. So that's what he did. And I think that same thing is occurring right now, at least here in the States. I could see it in Europe also, I think, but I think the States is going at an extremely faster speed. Why? Because there is a large community that develops content, digital content in the US. So for example, I'll give you one example. There's a company called FlickPlay, okay? The CEO comes from the virtual reality area, okay? And she has developed this company, FlickPlay, which is actually bringing the metaverse to the real world. So now your NFTs, you can make videos in the real world where your NFTs that are of your property can be used. So this is sort of like NFT meets TikTok meets Pokemon Go, okay? Now, that is extremely powerful because of the number of people that use those platforms. And cities are finding out that with this new metaverse concept, they can put NFTs in different parts of the city that can help people navigate the city. Now, the big discussion was, when are wearables going to come to fruition and really be, the glasses that will permit you to navigate both the real world and the augmented reality world through NFTs. So this is like really crazy. Imagine that you right now, instead of looking at your phone, navigating in your Waze, you have glasses and the indications are through NFTs that are in the city. It really becomes a different concept and a different way to live the world.
Yeah, it will be some kind of like hyper reality, let's say, that you are combining like everything that is digital with the ones that you have like, let's talk about real world that actually like both of them will be, but let's say maybe tangible world, like we can actually cooperate. But yeah, that's like actually an amazing point of view that you are raising, Pablo, because one of the things that I bet that most old companies are questioning is like, this is actually payoff. Like, if I go and I will introduce myself into this digital world, there is actually like, let's say, some kind of strategy that would give me back what I'm giving them. So usually one of the main points is like they try to find, of course, like regarding marketing strategies, I think that yes, it would be a definite yes. But in other cases, like say financial world or any other thing, like do you think that there's a space for them that is not just consumers?
Well, before answering that, I think Pablo, as before, laid out the ground. But we need to go a step back. It's not one city network. Let's give the example of, because telecoms here is perfect. In telecoms, you have private networks, you have public networks, then you have the concept of roaming, okay? That brings ubiquity, where you in Uruguay can speak to me in Malta, where myself, if I come from Malta, I can use the network, irrespective of the fact that my telephone and my SIM card is Maltese, in Uruguay, and vice versa. That's the concept of roaming. But that is the concept as well of an electronic communications network. Now, as I said before, here we're speaking about network. A network, metaverse, which has the potential to become a global network, which in the future could be the next internet. At least those are the predictions. However, you cannot have economies of scale, economies of scope, this network, unless you meet certain elements. So we're speaking about telecoms, we're speaking about networks. You need to have interoperability. You need to have interconnection. If I have a product on Pablo's Metaverse or Pablo's platform, okay, and I have my own platform and I have other products, they need to be interoperable. Why? Because at the end of the day, we need to create an economy, because the Metaverse is a mashing up as well of these networks. They need to be available. They need to be portable, okay? We indirectly need to make sure as well that the clients, the users interface seamlessly from one metaverse, from one actually network to the other. So here we have elements like persistence, synchronicity, availability. This is how the metaverse is going to be different from what we have today. An economy which is built on the metaverse. So yes, NFTs, any digital form of digital assets, DAOs as well, fueled by smart contracts, okay? Data which predominantly will rely in the cloud and on distributed ledgers. So all this needs to form part of an interoperable landscape. These are the elements for us to build an economy on the metaverse. And the metaverse is different because when we augment, where we mesh up everything, so when you have sensors, when you have smart chips, when you have AI, everything within this compound, within this universe. Can you imagine? This is very similar to Web 5.0. Whereas, for example, Web 3.0 failed with regards to particular elements, okay? If we take it to Web 5.0, the sentiment analysis, the data, everything is meshed together. You have augmented reality through glasses, through, Pablo mentioned glasses. You might have as well chips, cerebral enhancers, brain enhancers. Will that be IoT in the future? Will those communicate with other similar devices of other users? That is predominantly what we have at hand. But everything needs to communicate. Everything needs to fit in, blend seamlessly before we can start discussing NFTs, digital goods, because those are already there, but we haven't moved as yet to the level where the metaverse is something beyond what we currently have as a universe. At least this is my humble opinion.
I truly believe that, for example,
an issue with that. Remember, Ian, both you and I are old telco guys. So remember when you couldn't roam with your phone? Remember where you had the national networks and you actually, I mean, I remember that when I traveled from one country to the other, I had to get a cell phone in that country to be able to talk because there was no roaming. So what I think where we are right now is in that stage. And what's happening right now, I roam with my phone all over the world. I literally have not changed my chip in the last 2 years, but that has been an evolution. And what I think is happening in the metaverse, like I was talking with the CEO of one company, what they're doing is building wrappers for the NFTs from one metaverse to the other. And I think that we are like, you know, it says, is this useful for companies? That was the question that Agustina had. This is the same thing when we were in 1998, that companies were just putting up websites. They really didn't know what they were going to do with a website, but they knew that they had to be there. I remember the first Pizza Hut website that had, you know, they were the first ones that figured out that they could do takeout orders through their website. The rest were putting up websites, just giving content, but really didn't know how to exploit it. So I think we're sort of in the same situation than we were back then. But what I think is happening, and I'm seeing it, I mean, the speed of this evolution is incredible. I mean, from going from 1998 to 2022 in this new digital space is going to take 2 to 3 years.
More.
You know?
More. I tend to agree, Pablo. We've crossed paths several times, but remember that in telecoms, whereas there was no roaming and all the rest, there was a pre-established standard, which was the IMT 2000, and that was ubiquitous and universal. Based on that, then there was the 3GPP, then countries had their WCDMA, but at the end of the day, the standards were there, as much as the ISO standards with regards to network security and all the rest. So it is a little bit of a different parallel. Here, Metaverse aside, when we park the Metaverse, even when we speak about fungibility of tokens, standards used between fungibility and normal tokens, there is no harmonization. Even platform-wise, you have Solana. Okay, you say we're speaking about wrappers, but you're going to understand me. If we're going to reach a level, it will be in gradual stages, where we want this level of ubiquitousness, the wrappers will not be enough. So communication, establishment of value will need to be similar. Smart contracts, what we used to discuss before, remember, Pablo, even right. Communications in between chains. So yes, I agree with you, but we are still step 0.1 to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that we differ is on the speed that this is going through. Yeah. And really, we have to see, right now we're going to go probably into a crypto winter. So it's a good time to build. And I think a lot of this is going to be built during this crypto winter that we're going into, no?
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I think that everything regarding the crypto winter would help actually to get every project like more mature, let's say. Because of course there will be like difficult times, so each one of the companies should actually react to these difficult times, and it would actually get all these projects like more advanced. But one of the things that I also like, listen to you both, and it's actually really interesting. Let's say that we could agree that now the onboarding of the user, let's say when the user wants to start like getting into this digital world, is not as easy as it is now, for instance, as you were talking about, like keep picking up my cell phone and just bringing a call. Like that is not happening right now, but maybe it would, like in some near future, we hope. And we'll be more able actually to be using or to be operating in these like virtual spaces. And one of the things that I would also like to ask you is regarding regulation. In a lot of groups like magazines and media, they had all been raising this issue about like actually this metaverse or these virtual assets or this like virtual world universe needs to be regulated, or actually the regulation that we have now is useful and we should actually focus on that.
Shall I kick in first?
Yeah.
Because it's regulation? Okay. So before I hone directly on regulation, you spoke about identity accessibility. We're already having these problems even in DeFi, okay? Even with regards to crypto exchanges, custody, and there's already the FATF recommendations, which are pretty much international, particularly 13 and 16. AML legislation, which is already covering to a certain extent crypto to crypto, crypto to fiat, fiat to crypto. So we are evolving on that front as well. And particular providers being subject persons to a certain extent. And in the latest October, if I'm not mistaken, FATF recommendation, even DeFi was touched. So they were touching even on the software, who provided the software, if the software was going to be used to speculate, to do financial services. So I think that is something which we are already approaching irrespective of the Metaverse. In the Metaverse, we can have, yes, augmented problems because of AML, because of onboarding, but let's not forget, in the Metaverse, we already have a digital persona, irrespective of the Metaverse. So a digital persona is a reflection of your persona in the online world. Now, this can be, if you have augmented reality, even an avatar. With the Metaverse, we're going to hone more on this concept and to a certain extent see if it's a distinct persona or an extended persona, because sometimes what you do online, you don't do land-based, and sometimes even the personalities are different. So we're going to approach that as well. It's already covered partially even by data protection legislation, but very partially. Should we regulate the metaverse? The metaverse is regulated. Let us forget, the metaverse is a platform, is a network. Then there will be services on the platform that will not be in a form, as Pablo correctly stated, of websites. It will be direct interfaces. You might have as well banks in the metaverse, authorities in the metaverse. Already, Dubai has already an authority in the metaverse. You might have as well the police in the metaverse. The first NFT, okay, already served as summons to a targeted individual. This can happen in the metaverse as well. We already have consumer legislation applicable in the metaverse. We already have civil law provisions applicable in the metaverse, criminal law provisions, competition. In Europe, particularly, we have platform competition, the Digital Marketing Act, Digital Markets Act, which is going to target gatekeepers and platforms, which could fairly and squarely cover the metaverse or operators on the metaverse. Same for digital services. Mika, Dora, I've delivered presentations before. So if you have NFTs, if you have tokens, if you have smart contracts doing financial services functions, that is already regulated. What we don't have is a coherent legislation tackling the metaverse, but it is very similar to what you have on the internet. You don't have one regulation because it's impossible regulating a worldwide web, which is the internet. You have regulation where the activity, the particular protection is needed. So I would say that in the case of the metaverse, even though the European Commission, particularly in Europe, and I believe even the Americans are studying the concept of the metaverse and the regulation, they are seeing that a lot of the regulation which we have at hand right now is to a certain extent already covering the metaverse. Then we're going to find new instances. These are nuances. For example, whether intellectual property right, which applies for the land-based world, will be applicable, or online will be applicable as well in the metaverse. We already have cases. We're going to see as well whether criminal provisions, particularly where the element of property under criminal law does not cover virtual property, okay, and this to a certain extent being extended right now under certain jurisdictions, can be extended even further, okay, in the metaverse. We're going to see as well novel concepts of indemnity, protection, even when you grant certain rights, digital rights, IPR rights in the metaverse, particularly when you have meshed works or different IPRs interfacing with each other. We're going to see a lot of these things. We're going to see as well whether if you have, for example, administrative asset recovery or asset freezing, if that can be done as well within the metaverse or in the metaverse, and how that can be done, how jurisdiction will be established, who will carry the investigations in case of criminal prosecution. All this is a work in progress. We've already passed through this through the internet. We've passed through this. We're still passing through this. We're evolving. Every country seeing the legislation, not only licensing, but even operationally, criminally, civil legislation to cater for digital assets, not only crypto, because we're speaking about as well about security assets, STOs as well. So it will be the same thing. And I think we will learn, we'll take steps from what we already have, from the legacy, from the experience we're currently enhancing with crypto. There might be things which are a novelty with the metaverse, but we need to start with what we have. I doubt that the European Commission or any other mission will directly regulate metaverse as an output function, similar to what we've done in crypto, similar to what we've done, for example, in gaming. I think that for the time being, we need to observe. We need to learn from what we're doing in other facets, gaming, still works in progress, crypto, okay, digital assets, and build upon that to cater for the metaverse.
Yeah, I think that regarding Europe, like in Europe, they are always like acting as a region. Like say European is actually like making regulations in fintechs, MiCA regulated, like everything is like under just like European region. So that is actually something good because of course we cannot be regulating such as, let's say, each one of the jurisdictions because of course we are like operating internationally. So that it will be one of the main challenges about this. And I would say that the only region maybe that does that is actually Europe. Like that doesn't happen around here. So maybe we would have a lot of work to do. But let's say that, of course, like each region is gonna be interconnected also. So that is one of the main challenges that I think that will be raised and what actually we need more international support on this. And
Yes, definitely.
yes, and I would like
totally
to
agree also with Ian what he's talking. I mean, I think that the main issue here that we're going to deal in the metaverse is intellectual property. So IP, I think, is going to be one of the main issues there because what happens if I build Louis Vuitton on the metaverse and I start selling virtual Louis Vuitton? You know, will the law protect Louis Vuitton in the metaverse? So I think it's an intellectual property for me is one of the main issues that's going to pop up like right now when the brands are getting on the metaverse.
Yeah, as Pablo was saying, actually content is one of the main points in Metaverse. So it's actually really related with what Pablo is saying with intellectual property. But also, Pablo, I know that you were like, you had a lot of experience regarding DAOs. So what do you think actually that would be the DAOs involved in everything that has to do with this virtual world or Metaverse?
Well, you know what's happening in this digital world, and Ian was mentioning in all this meshing, is like the perfect storm. Like this is the perfect storm between what we obtained with crypto was the first time that we could pass value from one individual to the other in the digital form. And that sort of opened Pandora's box to all of these innovations. It opened the Pandora's box to DeFi. It opens Pandora's box to the metaverse. And what I think is happening now is that we have old structures for the new digital age. And the DAOs, what are going to become, and that's my thesis, that we will have DAOs as the new corporate or organizational structure for humans in the digital age, because it's a new structure that's actually a digital structure for organizing people. So I think that now when DAO meets metaverse, meets crypto, meets DeFi, it's just going to spark a new round of innovation that's really going to first make the regulators go crazy because they're already, they're running from behind on crypto. Imagine, we already jumped to DeFi, we're in the metaverse, and now we have organizations that span the whole world. So I think what's going to happen is that the new DAOs are going to find different jurisdictions where they can put a cable to the ground and access the real world. In Liechtenstein, we're working on that sort of legislation to be able to make the connection between the real world, this new type of organization, and all of this digital transformation that's occurring.
Yeah, that is actually really interesting because I bet that even now being like under regulation, like they have to be dealing with cryptocurrencies, after that NFTs, and now they have been dealing with this whole metaverse and digital world. So I bet that is a lot. But of course, like let's say like the world is very dynamic, so we need to at least try to keep in track and see where it's going. So I don't know what your thoughts, Ian, actually about this. I know that also you were really involved in DAOs, but also like everything regarding the regulation of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, let's park artificial intelligence for now. We'll come to that. If you
okay.
Let me first tackle what Pablo was saying regarding IPR. I've published, and there are already cases with regards to IPR. And the IPR, to a certain extent, unless specifically stated that it is, particularly here we're speaking about copyright and trademarks, okay, trademarks in particular, that it covers as well the online part or the metaverse. It is not so clear whether it is protected. Right now, there's the Nike versus StockX, there's the Hermes case. So it is, the initial thoughts are that you need to specifically state it. So IPR, as Pablo correctly stated, it will be tested, not only on this, but on other facets. IPR, even for example, sui generis rights on data. The European Commission right now is pushing what we call the Data Act, where under the Data Act, for interoperability, particularly when you have IoT and you have something which is seamless, the European Commission proposed, and it is part now of the up-and-coming legislation, that any IoT-generated data, machine-generated data, is not protected by sui generis rights, database rights, okay? Now, if you take that analogy, if legislation had to stretch, let's park the DIO, because even DIO, it can be, if it's generated by artifacts, it is machine-generated. But if, for example, it is generated through goggles, through augmented reality devices, imagine if the same principle had to apply. So even there's personal data. Would that be deemed to be personal data? Would it be deemed to be data which previously was protected by intellectual property right? Is intellectual property right now still applicable because it's machine-generated data? So even there, we're going to open Pandora's box. And this is going to be the metaverse. DAO. Here I would like to make a premise. DAO is not a new legal entity. DAO is a manifestation of what we have, okay, accepting a new digital medium. But it is based on what we have. We already have decentralized entities. I can be a shareholder in Malta. Pablo can be a shareholder in the States. We can have two shareholders from China, from Uzbekistan, and we have a company. We have as well an association, not necessarily a company. We might have as well a joint venture. The important thing is that whatever we agree to do together, and this is the lick, is accepted as a legal person. So we natural persons, under a universitas rerum, we form a legal person because that legal person has distinct personality. That legal person can have banking facilities. That legal person can trade. DAO, okay, will work under the same concept. The DAO, okay, unless AI, IoT improves to such an extent where you might have a bot, but here we're speaking about legal personality beyond the scope of this discussion. But within a DAO, we're going to have the same concept, okay, but the added part would be that the memorandum and articles, the agreement is not only digitalized, but it is executable. So if I agree with Pablo that at the end of the year, should there be X amount of profit, we take X plus Y amount of dividend, the DAO within the same structure, because there is a smart contract or multiple, because usually there are multiple smart contracts, will execute that immediately. So in that case, the DAO is deterministic, and that is the future. But per se, the DAO, as legal personality is concerned, will need to rely on what we have at hand. It's true, not a lot. Liechtenstein is moving ahead. We had a legislation in Malta as well, which was sparked, because when you build legal personality and you have shareholders, the same obligations with regards to AML, CFT will apply. You need to know the shareholders. You have source of wealth, source of fund. You need to update your the information about the shareholders, where they are residing, which is going to be problematic as well, irrespective of the metaverse, because of nomadicity. People are digital nomads. So whenever we build a DAO, it will need to be built on these concepts. No legislation at the current moment is aiming, because they cannot, to detract from these concepts. The only thing which we're doing, legislations like Liechtenstein, what we try to do in Malta, other legislations as well, even Portugal, okay, was to make sure that the DAO, the nomenclature of DAO, if it follows the same meter, can be considered as a legal person under the respective jurisdiction.
Well, I think that maybe in conclusion, it would be more than the DAOs or the DAOs, as we said it. It could be actually considered as a tool and not like just like a legal entity, let's say.
Yes, they could be a rapper.
Well, I would like to thank you both for this amazing fireside chat that we have. There were a lot of questions about this new paradigm regarding virtual spaces or scenarios. And I bet that we have more questions going on, and let's see what the future brings. So thank you both so much for this time. And it was a pleasure actually being here and all these new thoughts. And let's hope to have more times to actually share all this information. So thank you, Ian, and thank you, Pablo, for everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Pablo. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye, Ian.
See you in Uruguay.
Malta.
We hope that next time you're actually both in Uruguay, so we can have you both here.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.